It's time to say bye to the Mopar 361 big block, but it's not for the reasons you might think. The engine is still perfectly fine, and in fact it's all assembled currently right now, but there's a lot of things that I need to do to the car that I can't do while the engine is still in place. So in order to simplify everything for myself, I'm going to go ahead and tear the whole thing apart, fix what I got to fix, and then put it all back together again, probably better than it was before. As you guys know, I've assembled and disassembled and reassembled this various times, but I've never actually pulled the engine out, and that's exactly what we're going to go ahead and do today. I'm going to try to pull it out as complete as I can, but in order to do that, I've got to remove almost the entire turbo system, so that's where we're going to go ahead and start. It looks like we are at a stalemate between my Dodge Charger and the 361 big block. As you can see, the chain setup is just a little bit too long. I'm losing about, let's say, 6 inches or so. But what I really need to do is scoot the whole thing forward so I can get over this radiator, or at least a radiator support if I have to remove the radiator. The whole engine is out of the car already. You can see my stock converter is hanging down there as well. My K-member is all there. Everything's all nice and dirty, ready to get power washed. After this whole thing gets taken apart and painted, it's probably going to look pretty good. But as of right now, it still looks pretty bad. So let's go ahead and keep on going. I basically got two options right now. I can either remove the radiator, fans, trans coolers, or I can remove the hood. If I wasn't here chilling by myself, I'd probably be able to remove the hood. But because I like to do things by myself, removing the hood might not be an option. We'll have to see about that. But as you guys can see, I've got everything from the distributor, the intake manifold, the water pump housing, water pump, alternator. This is all still intact. The front pulley's there. Even the oil filter, oil pump, and there's still oil in the pan. So if I blow up the pan, I'm probably gonna get 6 quarts of oil all over my floor. I didn't see a reason to remove any of this because it would just be a waste of time. So I decided to pull it all out in one go, and it actually worked out pretty good, so I'm happy about that. I actually got the engine onto the floor. What I did was I took off the 2 bolts that were facing forward, and then I loosened the 2 rear ones. That gave me enough room to pivot the hood actually a lot higher than you'd be able to with the regular hinges, and that gave me just enough room to continuously slide the engine back. You guys can see that it was sliding up on the bottom of the hood, which no big deal. I'm probably gonna get this hood either sandblasted or replaced. It does have a little bit of rust inside, so it's really not the best hood in the world, but it's whatever I have now, and that's what we're just gonna keep using, at least until I can find a fiberglass one. Like I said, the engine is now on the ground. As you guys can see, the whole inside is now completely free. I can jump in there and do whatever I need to do. I'm probably going to remove the heater core. I'm going to remove the factory fuse block. We're going to be installing a painless universal wiring harness into this car, so that way I can redo the entire wiring. Almost nothing works on this car. I piggybacked all kinds of wires inside of the dash to get the lights to turn on, and the turn signals don't even work. The hazards don't work. The horn doesn't work. It doesn't even have a horn. But you get the idea. None of the factory ignition even works. In fact, the factory ignition switch doesn't even work. Slowly that's been dying too, so that one's going to get completely removed. And we're also going to be installing an aftermarket steering column to take the place of the steering column that we have here. I'm probably going to keep the factory power steering gear because I haven't had any issues with it, so that's going to stay. Fast forward a few hours, and I've already pushed the 73 Charger back outside. I've got the 361 right here on the floor, and since I've got the motor just chilling here, there's something I do want to check and see if I can make work. So behind this, I have a TR6060 6-speed manual transmission. I also have a quick time adapter that does not necessarily fit this combination, but I'm actually going to try to get this combination to bolt together properly. So this is a Dodge TR6060. It came out of, like, let's say a Scat Pack or Hellcat type vehicle. This particular one is 2016. The bell housing itself is designed to bolt onto a big block Mopar, and the backside is supposed to go to a Chevrolet T56. Now you guys can already start to see a problem here. We got a Dodge TR6060, a Chevrolet T56 bell housing, and a Mopar big block. It seems unlikely, but I do think I can get it to work, and let me show you why. I went ahead and sat up the TR6060, and now I'm going to grab the bell housing, and hopefully I don't drop the transmission, but I got it in one of the dowels. I got another dowel right over here. There we go. There you go. As you can see, the bolt pattern for the T56 and the TR6060 is actually pretty close to the same. We've got a bolt hole here, we got a hole here. We've got another bolt hole over here. We got a hole here. This is the only hole that doesn't seem to line up properly. There's a bolt hole here and there's a hole there, so the casing's a little bit different in the newer transmission. But aside from that, hole here, thread a hole here, thread a hole here. Aside from that, everything else lines up. This whole thing lines up, so this whole thing lines up properly. But the actual issue is this. I'm going to try to line up the bell housing right here so you guys can get an idea of what's going on. And if you guys can see, the pilot is actually sticking out way too far outside of the bell housing. How much too far? I don't actually know. So what I'm going to try to do is try to find a pilot bearing or a pilot bushing that'll go into the big block Mopar. So right now I have a high performance flex plate. This one is made by PRW. So I'm gonna have to pull that off and install a pilot, and then I'm gonna have to bolt the bell housing onto the engine and then see how much of the transmission I can slide in without it causing a problem. After a little bit of research, I realized that the small block and big block converters use the same register inside of the blocks to locate the torque converters. And then I realized that the later small blocks actually used a pressed-in pilot bearing for their transmissions, which is this one that I picked up at my local auto parts store. What's also interesting about this is that the transmissions from this era, along with the TR6060, use the same input shaft diameter. So this thing basically means two different things. The first being that this pilot bearing should press onto this big block, and the second thing is that this pilot bearing should slip over the pilot of this transmission. So let's go ahead and try to test fit this on this right now, and there he goes. Fits perfect, nice and snug, no problems there. I should probably have cleaned it before. I should have probably cleaned it before trying to install it, but at least we know that it does fit. So now if you try to put this thing on the back of the crank, it should press right in, and that basically solves my pilot bearing situation. So the only thing left to do now is to go ahead and smack on this pilot bearing, remove the flex plate, and then we're going to install a flywheel so I can locate the teeth on the starter to make sure that's all going to line up. Then I'm going to go ahead and install the bell housing onto the big block, and then we're going to measure from the pilot bearing to the end of the flange to see how much distance we have there. From there, I'll be able to measure from this flat surface here to the end of the input shaft, and then figure out what the difference is in the distance. From there, I'll be able to make the correct spacers to either space out the bell housing from the block or space out the bell housing from the transmission. And hopefully, if everything works out, it should all bolt together. But before we get into that, I do want to go ahead and remove the cylinder heads from the Mopar 361 because we are going to be using those for a different project that I'll show you guys. So for now, let's go ahead and pull the intake off and the cylinder heads off so I can show you guys what the inner bores of the 361 actually look like. Alright, so I managed to pull the first head off, and this is actually the head that I did not remove the day that we replaced the head gasket on the other side of this motor when Travis Black was here a couple months back. So as you guys can see, I am having head gasket issues because the sealing ring of the head gasket's right here, and I was getting water passing through this passage and crossing through the sealing ring. The middle cylinder is fine, but if we jump over to the other side, we're having the same issue from here to here. If we go ahead and look down on the block, you can see that I had a sealing problem going from here to here, and then again from there to there. There isn't a lot of space between the sealing ring and the cooling passages. The next thing that I noticed is that, as you guys can see, the cooling passage on the block is right here, but the head actually cools from right here. So I was barely getting any water going through the block into the head, and so that was leading into my overheating condition, which was the main reason why I actually took this all apart in the first place. You can definitely tell that I was getting water in the cylinder because, as you guys can see, this piston is nice and white here on this side where the water looked like it was coming in. It's actually cleaning off the piston. The other cylinders don't seem to have that issue, or at least not that much. This cylinder is unusually clean, and so that tells me that there's probably an issue. I went ahead and pulled off the valley cover so we can take a quick look at the camshaft to see what that looks like. But before that, let's take a quick look at the inside of these ports and the cylinder heads, and you're going to see almost like black spray paint inside of these ports, and that's actually reversion from the camshaft, so you can see that it almost looks like exhaust, and that's pretty much normal for cams that have a decent amount of overlap. So we are getting a little bit of reversion. There's nothing you can really do to fix that. It just kind of is what it is. So we're going to ignore the black spots of the reversion and take a look at the camshaft. And for a hydraulic flat tappet camshaft, it actually does look pretty good. Like, I don't see any kind of problem with it. All the lobes have a little bit of wear on them, which is fine. There is a little bit of like rust or oxidation, and that's probably from the water mixing with the oil. In fact, if you look back here, you can definitely see signs of water mixed with oil. So that's all going to be because of the head gasket issues. I'm pretty sure this camshaft is still fine to keep running in a different motor, or if I decide to fix this motor and put this camshaft back in, I'm pretty sure it's fine. So I'm not going to trash it. Everything looks good on this end. The lifters are probably fine, but I'll actually go through all of this and figure out what still works and what doesn't, so that way we can get the Dodge Charger running a little bit better than it has before. So that's all for today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I will see you guys all in the next one. Night Wrencher signing out. I actually had to add in a note at the end of this video because something happened in the last 2 days. So I had actually taken this motor apart, I believe Wednesday. I uploaded everything up on my story, let everybody know that the motor was coming out, all fine and dandy, had some good conversation with some people, figured out a plan of what we're gonna do, and I think everything's gonna be moving forward pretty smoothly. If we go ahead and look outside, sorry, I don't really have a flashlight with me, so you guys are gonna have to bear with me. I'm just using the flash for my phone today. But if we come out here and look outside, you guys can see that there is no engine in my car. Like, I got the radiator, I got the core support, transmission's there, my stock torque converter's there. Like, there's nothing in the car. Everything's sitting right over there. So the issue is that I actually got called out this afternoon by a gentleman by the name of Infamous Nova. Actually, I gotta close this hood, so give me a sec. So as I was saying, I got a notification of a call out by a fellow YouTuber by the name of Infamous Nova. You guys have seen him on my page quite a bit. He's very loud and he does kind of some like random stuff. So I was talking to him on Wednesday and I was letting him know what I was doing, and I was pulling the motor out and I had all these other issues and I wanted to take care of them. And we were just talking, then we started talking about tuning and got off track and whatever. So the conversation ended on Wednesday. So today is actually Friday. I just got back from the dyno. I was at the dyno with Pontiac Ray and No Bolts Left Behind, and surprise, surprise, with Infamous Nova. So I'm out there doing my thing, organizing stuff, getting stuff ready for the next run. And Infamous Nova pulls his phone out and we're all joking and doing whatever we do. We had already been doing that like the entire day, so this was like not a new thing. So he pulls out his phone and he says, "This is an official call out, calling Night Wrencher."
Here at California Auto Works, doing this dyno. We got Pontiac Ray here, Night Wrencher over there. Night Wrencher, this is your official call out. When we racing?
Whatever you want. When do you want to race?
First week of May. First week of May. You can do that?
What do you want to race? My 361 big block?
I don't care what you bring.
My 4-cylinder Honda? I'm like, are you being serious right now? Like, are you just like playing? Because you know that we just talked about this 2 days ago and my car does not have an engine. Like, I pulled it out a couple days ago. So I don't understand why you're trying to call me out when you know that my car is apart. Unless you were waiting for the car to come apart, because you didn't call me out last week, you didn't call me out last month, you didn't call me out 4 months ago. You're calling me out right now, literally 2 days after my car is apart. So this is all part of a ploy for him to try to rush me and get me out on the track. Like, I'm not going to go. Engine is apart. A couple days ago I showed you guys that this block is pretty much done. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it, so I'm weighing my options about what I'm going to do. I might end up swapping it, I might end up doing something else, but for the time being, I'm not working on the car, and in 2 weeks, there's no way I can get everything done. Even if I just decide to rebuild this engine, I have to order pistons, I have to take the block to go get machined, I have to go get everything cleaned and reinstalled, I have to get the crank polished, buy new bearings, buy new seals, head gaskets, Like, it's too much time and money that I don't have right now in order to get this engine reassembled and back into the car, so I'm just not going to worry about it. He's probably going to try to say that I'm scared or I'm trying to duck him, but he literally knew that my engine came out 2 days ago. Like, I had a conversation with him. So the fact that my engine is apart is not actually news to him, because I talk to the guy every single day, so I don't know what kind of trick he's trying to pull. I don't know what his angle is, but honestly, this is all kind of scummy, and I don't understand why he's doing this. So there's no way I'm going to get this car reassembled in a week and a half, so you can go kick rocks.